You'll have many. They'll compete, and it'll be a beautiful thing.
Right. And so that's the only part of the plan? Just the lines, the interstate competition?
No, the nice part about the plan, you'll have many different plans. You'll have competition. You'll have so many different plans.
But now he's repeating himself.
No, I'm not repeating. No. I don't repeat myself. You don't repeat yourself. Here's the guy who repeats himself. You repeat yourself every day. I watched him, talking about repeating, I watched him repeat himself 5 times 4 weeks ago. And
I saw you repeat yourself 5 times 5 seconds ago.
I watched him melt down on the stage like I've never seen anybody. I thought he came out of the swimming pool.
I said, well,
let's talk about your
plan. Every night it says 5 things. Everyone's dumb. He's going to make America great again. We're going to win, win, win. He's winning in the polls. And the lines around the state. Every night, same thing.
If you could talk a little bit more about your plan. I know you talked about
we have many different plans because there's going to be competition. There is going to be competition among all of the states and the insurance companies. They're going to have many, many different plans.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No, there's nothing to add. What's to add? What is to add?
Thank you both.
Right.
Governor Kasich, you've said it is, quote, un-American to deny someone health insurance if they have a pre-existing condition. Would you leave the individual mandate in place, requiring all Americans to purchase insurance?
No, I wouldn't. But that doesn't matter when it comes to the issue of pre-existing conditions. You don't want any American to lose their house, everything they've saved, because they get sick. Now, I think it is more complicated than what we've heard here tonight. We're actually running significant health reform in my state. I would repeal Obamacare for a variety of reasons. I would take some of the federal resources, combine it with a freed up Medicaid program, which I would send back to the states, and cover the people who are currently the working poor, because we don't want to have tens of millions of Americans losing their health insurance. And then we're driving towards total transparency. If any of you here ever get a hospital bill, it's easier to interpret the Dead Sea Scrolls than to understand your hospital bill. The facts with hospitals and with the providers. And I'll tell you what we will do. We are actually going to make payments to physicians and to hospitals who actually deliver health care with great quality at low prices. We're actually going to make the market work.
Governor, let me just go back to the original question about the individual mandate. In 1994, when you were in Congress, you proposed a plan requiring an individual mandate. So what changed?
Well, Dan, the Heritage Foundation had this position as well. And when I look at it, I don't think it's tenable. And we don't need to do that. Again, I'm telling you that we have a proposal, a plan that we're enacting now, that it says if you are a hospital or a doctor and you're providing very high quality at lower prices below the midpoint, some charge high, some charge low. If you are below the midpoint, we are going to give you a financial reward for allowing you to provide services that result in high quality for our people at lower prices. That is the way in which we are going to damp down the rising costs of health care. Because if you think about your own deductibles today, they're going higher, higher, and higher. And you know what? At some point, people can't afford it. Our plan will work. It uses the market. It uses transparency. It gets the patient in the middle. And guess what? We're actually the largest state in the country. And if this will guess what? They will get a financial reward. And we will begin to see support. We're losing them affordable in America, and where people will also be able to have health insurance even if they have a pre-existing condition. Really what we're doing. This is not a theory. This is what we are actually doing in our state. We will begin payments next year based on episodes that we have in our lives. If our primary care physicians keep us healthy for a year with really high quality, guess what? They will get a financial reward. Our primary care physicians need help. They need support. We're losing them. This will allow them to get a reward for doing
Governor
a great
Kasich,
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Carson. Dr. Carson, you have dealt with the sickest of patients. You support covering pre-existing conditions. How would you change Obamacare but maintain that coverage?
Well, first of all, health care is not a right, but I do believe it is a responsibility for a responsible society, and we are that. We spend almost twice as much per capita on health care as many other nations who have actually much better access than we do. I propose a system in which we use health empowerment accounts, which are like a health savings account with no bureaucrats. And we give it to everybody from birth until death. They can pass it on when they die. We pay for it with the same dollars that we pay for traditional health care with. We give people the ability to shift money within their health empowerment account within their family. So if dad's $500 short, mom can give it to him, or cousin or uncle. And it makes every family their own insurance carrier with no middleman. It gives you enormous flexibility. And also, you know, if Uncle Joe is smoking like a chimney, everybody's going to hide his cigarettes because they're all interested in what's going on there. Also, your catastrophic health care is going to cost a lot less money now because the only thing coming out of that is catastrophic health care. So it's like a homeowner's policy with a large deductible versus a homeowner's policy where you want every scratch covered. One costs $1,500 a year, one costs $10,000 a year. You can buy the $1,500 one. That will take care of 75% of the people. The people who are indigent, how do we take care of them now? Medicaid. What's the Medicaid budget? Almost $500 billion. Almost 80 million people participate, which is way too many, and that'll get a lot better when we fix the economy, which I hope we get a chance to talk about. But do the math, over $5,000 for each man, woman, and child, and they will have a lot more flexibility. What could you buy with that? A concierge practice. And you could still have thousands of dollars left over. And let me just finish, because I don't get to talk that much. And, you know, you have the money that's left over to buy your catastrophic insurance, but most importantly, we give them a menu just like we do on Medicare Part C, and they have the choices that will allow them not only to have catastrophic health care, but drug care and everything else. It will be such a good program that nobody will want Obamacare after that, and that's probably the best way to do it, although if anybody still did, I would still defund it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carson. Let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about the economy.
Wolf, does everyone get to address Obamacare but me?
I want to move on, but there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to address.
It's kind of an issue I have a long history with.
I know you do it. And all right, go ahead.
Thank you, Wolf.
How do you get that extra time, Cruz? You're very good at.
You know, this is another issue on which Donald and I have sharp disagreements. On Planned Parenthood, he thinks Planned Parenthood is wonderful. I would instruct the Department of Justice to investigate them and prosecute any and all criminal violations. On Obamacare, both Donald and I say we want to end it, but for very different reasons. I want to end it because it goes too far, it's killed millions of jobs, and it's hurting people's health care. Donald wants to end it because he says it doesn't go nearly far enough. And what was amazing in that exchange that was missing is for decades, Donald has been advocating socialized medicine. What he said is the government should pay for everyone's health care. And in fact, a couple of debates ago, he said, if you don't support socialized health care, you're heartless. Now, liberal Democrats have been saying that for years. Now, let me tell you, if you're a small business owner, Donald Trump's socialized medicine, putting the government in charge of your health care, would kill more jobs than Obamacare. And if you're elderly, the results of socialized medicine in every country on earth where it's been implemented has been rationing, has been the government saying, no, you don't get that hip replacement, you don't get that knee replacement. The government is in charge of your health care. I'll tell you this, as president,
Senator,
I will repeal every word of Obamacare.
Thank you. Mr. Trump.
I do not want socialized medicine, just so you understand. I do not want socialized medicine. I do agree with him that it's going to be a disaster, Obamacare, for the economy. In 2017, it's going to be impossible for us to pay for it if you look at what's going on. That's why it has to be repealed, for a lot of reasons. Number one, it doesn't work. Number two, premiums, you look at premiums going up 25, 35, even 45% and more. We have to get rid of Obamacare. It is going to destroy our economy completely. Our economy is not doing well. It is going to destroy our economy greatly. And on that, I agree.
Donald, true or false, you've said the government should pay for everyone's health care?
That's false.
You've never said that.
No, I never. I said it worked in a couple of countries,
But
I never
you've
said
never
it.
stood on this debate stage and says it works
No,
great
I
in
did
Canada
not.
and Scotland, and we
No,
should do
I
it
did
here.
not.
Did you
No, I
say
did not.
if you want people to die on the streets, if you don't support socialized health care, you have no
Correct.
heart?
I will
Did you
not
say
let
you're a
people
liberal
die
on
on the
health
streets
care?
if I'm president.
Have
If
you said you're a liberal on
excuse
health
me,
care?
let me talk.
Talk away.
If people-
Explain your plan, please.
My plan is very simple. I will not, we're going to have private health care, but I will not allow people to die on the sidewalks and the streets of our country if I'm president. You may let it, and you may be fine
So
with
does
it.
the government pay
I'm
for
not
everyone's
fine
health
with
care?
it. We are going to take
Yes
those
or no?
people and
Just
they're going
answer
to
the question.
Excuse me. We are going to take those people, and those people are going to be serviced by doctors and hospitals. We're going to make great deals on it, but we're not going to let them die in the streets.
Who pays for it?
Can
Who
I just
controls?
clarify something?
Senator, gentlemen,
Well,
gentlemen,
no, I
please.
want to clarify something.
Gentlemen,
this
please,
is a
I want to
Republican
move on.
debate, right?
I want to talk
because
about
that attack
the
about letting
economy.
people die on the
This
streets
is a
if the
critical
government doesn't
answer. He
support
should
health
answer.
care.
The government would
That's
pay
what
for it.
Gentlemen, all of
Democrats
you
say.
have
refusing to answer that
Call
question.
it
Senator
what you
Cruz.
want. You know what? Call it what you want.
It's a yes or
People-
no.
Call it what you want. People are not going to be dying
All
on
of
the
you have
sidewalks of the
agreed.
street.
All of you have agreed to the rules.
whatever
I
you
want to
want.
move on. We're talking about the economy right now. Mr. Trump, you want to cut taxes more than President Ronald Reagan did, more than President George W. Bush did. The Independent Tax Foundation says the cost to the country of your proposal would be about $10 trillion, and that takes into account the economic growth that would emerge from your proposed tax cuts. How would you cut $10 trillion over 10 years but make sure the country isn't saddled with even more debt?
Because the country will become a dynamic economy, will be dynamic again. If you look at what's going on, we have the highest taxes anywhere in the world. We pay more business tax, we pay more personal tax, we have the highest taxes in the world. It's shutting off our economy, it's shutting off our country. We have trillions of dollars outside that we can't get in. Yes, we will do my tax plan and it will be great. We will have a dynamic economy again.
What specific cuts will you make to pay for that tax cut?
We're going to make many cuts in business. We're going to get rid of so many different things. Department of Education, Common Core is out. We're going local. Have to go local. Environmental protection. We waste all of this money. We're going to bring that back to the states. And we're going to have other things, many things. We are going to cut many of the agencies. We will balance our budget, and we will be dynamic again.
Mr. Trump, if you eliminate completely the Department of Education as you have proposed, that's about $68 billion. If you eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency, that's about $8 billion. That's about $76 billion for those two agencies. The current deficit this year is $544 billion. Where are you going to come up with the money?
Waste, fraud, and abuse all over the place. Waste, fraud, and abuse. You look at what's happening with Social Security. You look at what's happening with every agency. Waste, fraud, and abuse. We will cut so much, your head will spin.
Governor Kasich, when you were in Congress, you were chairman of the Budget Committee. You helped craft the last balanced budget the United States had. Can Mr. Trump's plan work?
Well, I think it takes three things, Wolf, and I've done it. I mean, we got the budget balanced. We cut the capital gains tax. You see, in order to get this economy moving again, you have to grow the economy and you have to restrain the spending. And when I was chairman, we cut that capital gains tax and we instituted a significant program to get to balance. We had a balanced budget 4 years in a row, had to take on every interest group in Washington, every single one of them. And we paid down $500 billion of the national debt. And why do you do it? Because you want job growth. If you don't have regulatory reform, common sense regulations, reasonable tax cuts, which I have, and a fiscal plan, you won't get there. You will never be able to do it. Now, I inherited an $8 billion hole in Ohio. I have common sense regulations. I have tax cuts, the biggest of any governor in the country. And we have a fiscal plan. And it's not always cutting, it's innovating. It's producing a better product at, frankly, a lower price. Now we have a $2 billion surplus. Our credit is strong. Our pensions are strong. And look, I've got a plan to take to Washington, and I will have it there in the first 100 days, and it will include shipping welfare, education, transportation, Medicaid, and job training back to us so we can begin in the states to be the laboratories of innovation. I did it in Washington, 4 years of balanced budgets. No one can even believe it happened. I've done it in Ohio. We're growing, the jobs are up, and people are having opportunity, and I will go back to Washington and do it again for the American people. I promise you that. Within the first 100 days, we will have the plan to get this done.
Thank you, Governor. Speaking of taxes.
I just want to say, and I'm a big fan of the governor, but they also struck oil. Okay, so that helped Ohio a lot.
Hey, let me just talk about that, because I know that Donald believes the energy industry is important. So do I. But of the over 400,000 jobs that we've created in the state, we think maybe 15,000 are connected to this industry because it's early stage. See, what we've done in Ohio and what a president needs to do is to have a cabinet and a whole operation that's jobs friendly. We have diversified our economy. We do have energy, we have medical devices, we have financial services, we have IT. We just got Amazon, their cloud computing in the Midwest. You know why it's happening? Because we're balanced budgets, we're strong, we're job friendly, we don't raise their taxes, and if we have a president that does that in America, we will get the economic growth, and that is what this country needs. Jobs, jobs, and jobs, period.
Mr. Trump. Yesterday, the last Republican presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, called on you to release your back tax returns and said, and I'm quoting him now, there is good reason to believe there is a bombshell in them. Romney said either you're not as wealthy as you say you are, he said maybe you haven't paid the kind of taxes we would expect you to pay, or you haven't been giving the money to veterans or disabled people. Are any of those accusations that he has leveled true?
All right, first of all, let me just explain. I was the first one to file a financial disclosure form, almost 100 pages. You don't learn anything about somebody's wealth with a tax return. You learn it from statements. I filed, which shows that I'm worth over $10 billion. I built a great company with very little debt. People were shocked. The people in the back, the reporters, they were shocked when they went down. And I filed it on time. I didn't ask for 5 45-day extensions, which I would have been entitled to. So as far as that's concerned, I filed it, and that's where you find out what kind of a company. You don't learn anything from a tax return. I will say this. Mitt Romney looked like a fool when he delayed and delayed and delayed, and Harry Reid baited him so beautifully. And Mitt Romney didn't file his return until September 21st of 2012, about a month and a half before the election. And it cost him big league. As far as my return, I want to file it, except for many years, I've been audited every year, 12 years or something like that. Every year, they audit me, audit me, audit me. Nobody gets audited. I have friends that are very wealthy people. They never get audited. I get audited every year. I will absolutely give my return, but I'm being audited now for 2 or 3 years, so I can't do it until the audit is finished, obviously, and I think people would understand that.
Hugh, go ahead.
Mr. Trump.
Are you going to ask?
Are
you going to ask anybody else a question?
No, this goes to me.
Every single question comes to me.
Mr. Trump,
I know I'm good for the ratings, but it's a little bit ridiculous.
No, but Mr. Trump, a year ago, you told me on my radio show, the audio and the transcript are out there on YouTube, that you would release your tax returns. True. Are you going back on your
No, I'm not.
commitment?
First of all, very few people listen to your radio show. That's the good news. Let me just tell you. Which happens to be true. Check out the ratings. Look, let me just tell you something. I want to release my tax returns, but I can't release it while I'm under an audit. We're under a routine audit. I've had it for years. I get audited. And obviously, if I'm being audited, I'm not going to release a return. As soon as the audit is done, I love it.
Okay, so Senator Rubio, Mitt Romney also called upon you to release your tax returns. Your campaign said last spring that you would release your returns that you had not previously released, and you'd say come out any day momentarily. When are we going to see your returns?
Yes, tomorrow or Saturday, in fact, is our plan to release them, and there's nothing really that interesting in them, so I have no problem releasing them. And luckily, I'm not being audited this year, or last year for that matter.
Senator Cruz.
This is my time. I want to go back to this question you asked about the debt. This is an important issue. It's a huge issue, okay? In less than 5 years, 83% of our entire budget will be made up of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the interest on the debt. That means only 17% of our budget will be for things like the military or the Department of Education or environmental protection issues. You cannot balance our budget unless you deal with that 83%. which is why I've been repeatedly talking about, since my time running for the Senate in Florida, where there are a lot of people like my mother that depend on Social Security and Medicare, on the need to save those programs by reforming the way they work for future generations. And I think the longer we take to do this, the closer we are going to get to a debt crisis. And Wolf, you did not get an answer to your question. This debt issue is, the next president of the United States will not be able to serve 4 to 8 years without dealing with the national debt. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when we have a debt crisis. And we should not leave the stage here tonight without hearing a serious answer from every single one of us about how we're going to bring the national debt under control once and for all.
Thank you, Senator Rubio, but I'm being fair to all of the candidates. Senator Cruz, Tuesday is 5 days away. Why haven't voters seen your 2012, 2013, and 2014 returns?
So I've released 5 years of tax returns already. We will have 2 more years available tomorrow. And I would note that this question really goes, Donald says he's being audited. Well, I would think that would underscore the need to release those returns. If he has said something that was false and that an audit is going to find was fraudulent, the voters need to know. And listen, people across this country, we recognize our country's in crisis. The most important question is, how do we win the general election in November 2016? And roughly 65% of Republicans think Donald is not the right candidate to go against Hillary Clinton. Now, part of the reason is in the last 10 polls on Real Clear Politics, he's lost to Hillary on 8 of them. In the last 10 polls on Real Clear Politics, I either tie or beat Hillary. And this is an example. The mainstream media is laying off Donald now. They're going to pick apart his taxes. They're going to pick apart his business deals. And let's take, for example, one of Hillary's great vulnerabilities, the corruption at the Clinton Foundation. The fact that she had CEOs and foreign companies giving her money while she was Secretary of State. The next Republican nominee needs to be able to make that case against Hillary. And if Donald tried to do it, Hillary would turn to Donald and say, but gosh, Donald, you gave $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation. I even went to your wedding. He can't prosecute the case against Hillary, and we can't risk another 4 years of these failed Obama policies by nominating someone who loses to Hillary Clinton in November.
Go ahead. At the beginning, I said openly to everybody that I contribute to many, many politicians, both Republican and Democrat. And I have over the years. I'm a business over the years. And I sort of have to laugh when Ted makes a big deal out of the fact that he's doing well in the polls. Well, I'm beating him in virtually every poll. I'm tied in Texas, by the way, which I shouldn't be, but I think I'll do very well. But a poll just came out, a Bloomberg poll, where I am beating him so badly that it's like embarrassing even for me to say I'm beating him that badly. And here's the thing. It was sort of funny. 65% of the people don't like you. I just got 36% of the vote, right? I just got 46% on another one. I got 38% on another one. That means, and he got 20 and 22, and he lost in South Carolina so badly. That was going to be his stronghold. He said a year ago, oh, I can't lose South Carolina. I beat him in a landslide. Last week in Nevada, I beat him in a landslide. And he's saying about the polls. What other thing? Hillary Clinton, take a look at USA Today, take a look at the Q poll. I beat her, and I beat her badly, and I haven't even started on her. I only had one little interchange. And that was 4 weeks ago when she said I was sexist. And believe me, they had a rough weekend that weekend between Bill and Hillary. They had a rough weekend.
Gentlemen.
Hold on. He attacked me, Wolf. I get a response.
I was about to say, Senator Cruz, respond.
Thank you very much. It's interesting. Donald went on an extended tirade about the polls, but he didn't respond to any of the substance. He has yet to say he can release past year's tax returns. He can do it tomorrow. He doesn't want to do it because presumably there's something in there that is bad. If there's nothing, release them tomorrow. They're already prepared. The only reason he's not releasing them is because he's afraid that he will get hit. Marco made reference earlier to the litigation against Trump University. It's a fraud case. His lawyers have scheduled the trial for July. I want you to think about if this man is the nominee, having the Republican nominee on the stand in court being cross-examined about whether he committed fraud. You don't think the mainstream media will go crazy on that? And on substance, how do we nominate a candidate who has said Hillary Clinton was the best Secretary of State of modern times, who agreed with her on foreign policy, who agrees with Bernie Sanders on health care, who agreed with Barack Obama on the Wall Street bailout.
right.
If we've got to win this election, and we can't do it with a candidate who agrees with Hillary Clinton and can't take it to her and beat her on the debate stage and at the polls.
Mr. Trump, hold on. Mr. Trump,
First of all,
Mr.
he's
Trump.
talking about the polls. I'm beating him awfully badly in the polls.
But
every
you're not
single
beating
one of them.
Hillary.
So
But
I don't
you're not
know.
beating
I don't-
Hillary.
Well, then if I can't beat her, you're really going to get killed, aren't you? So let me ask you this, because you're really getting beaten badly. I know you're embarrassed. I know you're embarrassed. But keep fighting. Keep swinging, man. Swing for the fences. Let me just tell you. The Trump University case is a civil case, it's a civil case. It's a case where people want to try and it's a case that is nonsense. It's something I could have settled many times. I could settle it right now for very little money, but I don't want to do it out of principle. The people that took the course all signed, many, signed report cards saying it was fantastic, it was wonderful, it was beautiful. And believe me, I'll win that case. That's an easy case, a civil case. Number two, as far as the taxes are concerned, I'm being audited. No, it's a very routine audit, and it's very unfair because I've been audited for, I think, over 12 years. Every year, because of the size of my company, which is very, very large, I'm being audited, which is a very large company.
Thank you.
I'm being audited 12 years in a row at least. Now, until that audit's done, and I don't think anybody would blame me, I'm not giving it,
Thank you.
but as soon
Thank
as
you.
it's
Thank
done,
you.
What about the
Gentlemen.
years you're not being audited? Will
Gentlemen,
you release
I'm
those
thank
being
you.
years?
audited for those years.
Which years? Which
Gentlemen.
years will you be
Last 4
audited
or 5 years.
Gentlemen,
you don't know
we
which years you're
have
being audited
rules.
for?
We're trying to obey these rules that all of you agreed. We're going to take a quick break. We have a lot more, many more critically important issues to discuss. Our coverage of this 10th Republican presidential debate from the University of Houston continues in a moment.
Think tonight's debate is tough? The first televised presidential debate changed the game
This was the largest audience on television, 70 million people.
and changed politics forever.
Television sees it all. Kennedy looks cool, confident, presidential. Nixon looks nervous. He's uneasy.
One wrong move can cost you everything.
The whole game would be decided at the first debate.
In the race for the White House, narrated by Kevin Spacey on CNN.
There is currently no cure for Anna's condition.
Free her from this. Can you even hear me?
You're telling me when this baby girl fell 30 feet, she hit her head just right and it didn't paralyze her. It healed her?
Yes.
That's impossible.
Miracles from Heaven.
He told me I'd be fine.
Who told you you'd be fine?
Based on the true story. Rated PG.
To introduce the new Infiniti QX50, we could have shown it on a winding mountain pass, or somewhere even more cliche, like a downtown street. But what distinguishes the Infiniti QX50 isn't where you can take it, it's how you feel taking it there. With generous cargo space, extended second row legroom, and coupe-like handling, the new QX50 from Infiniti. Lease the new Infiniti QX50 for $339 a month. Visit your local Infiniti retailer.
This July, have your voice be heard.
I purged.
I purged.
I purged.
I purged. I purged because staying in is un-American.
Don't let your freedoms get taken away.
I purged because it's my civic duty.
Show your support
I purged for my family.
for The Purge.
I purged to keep my country great.
The Purge, election year. Sailing through the heart of cities and landscapes with Viking, you'll see things differently. You'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local life and cultural treasures. It's a feeling that only a river can give you, that only Viking can give you. Spend less time getting there and more time being there. Viking, exploring the world in comfort.
I'm Carrie D. I've had moderate to severe plaque psoriasis most of my life. but that hasn't stopped me from modeling. My doctor told me about Stelara. It helps keep my skin clearer. With only 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses, Stelara helps me be in season.
Stelara may lower your ability to fight infections and increase your risk of infections. Some serious infections require hospitalization. Before starting Stelara, your doctor should test for tuberculosis. Stelara may increase your risk of cancer. Always tell your doctor if you have any sign of infection, have had cancer, or if you develop any new skin growths. Do not take Stelara if you are allergic to Stelara or any of its ingredients. Alert your doctor of new or worsening problems, including headaches, seizures, confusion, and vision problems. These may be signs of a rare, potentially fatal brain condition. Serious allergic reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you or anyone in your house needs or has recently received a vaccine.
In a medical study, most Stelara patients saw at least 75% clearer skin, and the majority were rated as cleared or minimal at 12 weeks. Stelara helps keep my skin clearer. Ask your doctor about Stelara.
Kathy's gotten used to the smell of lingering garbage in her kitchen. Yep, she's gone nose blind. She thinks it smells fine, but her guests smelled this. Febreze Air-Effects Heavy Duty has up to 2 times the odor-eliminating power to remove odors you've gone nose blind to. Use Febreze Air-Effects till it's fresh, and try Febreze Small Spaces to continuously eliminate up to 2 times the odors for 30 days. Febreze Small Spaces and Air-Effects, 2 more ways to breathe happy.
Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate here at the University of Houston. Gentlemen, I want to turn our attention right now to key issues involving foreign policy and national security. And Mr. Trump, I'll begin with you. You said this about the ongoing conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I'm quoting you now. Let me be sort of a neutral guy. I don't want to say whose fault it is. I don't think it helps. Right. Here's the question. How do you remain neutral when the U.S. considers Israel to be America's closest ally in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, I don't think they do under President Obama, because I think he's treated Israel horribly, all right? I think he's treated Israel horribly. I was the Grand Marshal down Fifth Avenue a number of years ago of the Israeli Day Parade. I have very close ties to Israel. I've received the Tree of Life Award and many of the greatest awards given by Israel. As president, however, there's nothing that I would rather do to bring peace to Israel and its neighbors generally. And I think it serves no purpose to say that you have a good guy and a bad guy. Now, I may not be successful in doing it. It's probably the toughest negotiation anywhere in the world of any kind, okay? But it doesn't help if I start saying, I am very pro-Israel, very pro, more than anybody on the stage. But it doesn't do any good to start demeaning the neighbors, because I would love to do something with regard to negotiating peace, finally, for Israel and for their neighbors. And I can't do that as well as a negotiator. I cannot do that as well if I'm taking big sides. With that being said, I am totally pro-Israel.
Senator Cruz.
Well, this is another area on which Donald agrees with Hillary Clinton, and on which I disagree with them both strongly. Both Donald and Hillary Clinton want to be neutral, to use Donald's word, between Israel and the Palestinians. Let me be clear. If I'm president, America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And the notion of neutrality is based upon the left buying into this moral relativism that is often pitched in the media. Listen, it is not equivalent. When you have terrorists strapping dynamite around their chest, exploding and murdering innocent women and children, they are not equivalent to the IDF officers protecting Israel, and I will not pretend that they are. Just today, Iran announced they're going to pay $7,000 to each suicide bomber, and I would note, missing from Donald's answer was anything he has done in his nearly 70 years of living defending Israel. I have over and over again led the fight to defend Israel, to fight for Israel, and this, if you want to know who will stand with Israel, we ought to start with who has stood with Israel when the heat was on.
Mr. Trump.
Well, I can only say, look, I can only say I've been a big contributor to Israel over the years. I've received many awards from Israel, as I've said before. I have a great relationship with Israel, and I'm going to keep it that way. And if I could bring peace, that would be a fantastic thing. It would be one of my greatest achievements as president.
Governor Kasich, I want you to weigh in.
Well, I mean, Wolf, I was in Congress for 18 years and on the Defense Committee, and then, you know, to help out with some things. And I've been a supporter of Israel, strong supporter of Israel, longer than anybody on this stage. I didn't give as much money as Donald gave, but I've been standing with the Israelis for a very long time. And frankly, I think the problem we have in foreign policy right now, Wolf, is that we are not certain with who we stand with. Our allies are not sure what to make of us, and our enemies are moving, and are moving because they're not sure what we will do. It's a very interesting development here within the last 24 hours. We said to the South Koreans that we would give them the high-altitude defense system. It really rattled the Chinese, and for the first time since we took positive action, the Chinese are beginning to take action against North Korea. When we stand firm and we let the world know who we're with, who we stand for, and we bring our allies together, that is the road forward.
We're going
to be able to solve the problems in this country.
We're going to get to North Korea in a moment, but Senator Rubio, what's wrong with the U.S. being an honest broker in a negotiation, as Mr. Trump is proposing?
Because, and I don't know if Donald realizes this, I'm sure it's not his intent perhaps, but the position you've taken is an anti-Israel position, and here's why. Because you cannot be an honest broker in a dispute between two sides in which one of the sides is constantly acting in bad faith. The Palestinian Authority has walked away from multiple efforts to make peace. Very generous offers from the Israelis. Instead, here's what the Palestinians do. They teach their 4-year-old children that killing Jews is a glorious thing. Here's what Hamas does. They launch rockets and terrorist attacks against Israel on an ongoing basis. The bottom line is a deal between Israel and the Palestinians, given the current makeup of the Palestinians, is not possible. And so the next president of the United States needs to be someone like me who will stand firmly on the side of Israel. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm not either side. I will be on his side. I will be on Israel's side every single day because they are the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the entire Middle East.
Mr. Trump.
I'm a negotiator. I've done very well over the years through negotiation. It's very important that we do that. In all fairness, Marco is not a negotiator. I watched him melt down, and I'll tell you, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. He's not going down.
He thinks the Palestinian is a real estate deal.
And these people may even be tougher than Chris Christie, okay?
The Palestinians are not a real estate deal, Donald.
Okay, no. A deal,
They're not a real estate deal.
Is a deal. Let me tell you,
a deal is not a deal when you're dealing with terrorists. Have you ever negotiated with terrorists?
You are not a negotiator. You are not a negotiator. And with your thinking, you will never bring peace. You will never bring peace.
Donald might be able to build condos in the Palestinian areas, but he's not going to. This is not a real estate deal.
Senator, he will never be able to do it. I think I may be able to do it, although I will say this. Probably the toughest deal of any kind is that particular deal.
Let's move on to talk about North Korea. You raised it, Governor Kasich. The threat posed by North Korea to the United States and its allies. The commander of American forces in South Korea said the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un would use a weapon of mass destruction if he thought his regime was being threatened. You have said the United States should start examining a strategy of regime change in North Korea. Let's be clear. Are you talking of Kim Jong-un?
Yeah, when you talk about regime change, Wolf, it means that regime change. That's Korea right now. There's a lot of reports of uncertainty and instability in that government. But look, here's what I think we ought to do, like immediately, and we've been kicking the can down the road on this for, 15 years. We should be intercepting the ships that are leaving North Korea so they're not selling this material or this technology or giving it to someone else. Secondly, same goes with the aircraft. Thirdly, we need to slap even tougher sanctions on North Korea because we really don't have the toughest sanctions on North Korea. We ought to talk about arming South Korea with a ballistic missile technology and of course, also Japan with ballistic missile technology. Because we're now starting to take a firm position, we have the attention of the Chinese. The Chinese are the best way to calm that regime down and get them in a position where they back off. But when I say regime change, I don't have to talk exactly what that means. Look, I've been involved in national security for a long time. You don't have to spell everything out. But what I'm telling you is you look for any means you can to be able to solve that problem in North Korea, and in the meantime, put the pressure on the Chinese, and what we're doing is beginning to work against them. They are the key to being able to settle this situation.
I just want to be precise, Governor Kasich, because this is critically important. There are 1 million North Korean troops north of the
Very
DMZ.
well aware of that.
1 million South Korean troops, 28,000 U.S. troops along the DMZ, right in between. Would you risk war for regime change?
Wolf, again, it would depend exactly what was happening, what the situation was. But if there was an opportunity to remove the leader of North Korea and create stability, because I'll tell you, you keep kicking the can down the road, we're going to face this sooner or later. But in the meantime, I'm also aware of the fact there's 10 million people living in Seoul. So you don't just run around making charges. I have put it on the table that I would love to see regime change in North Korea. Now, perhaps the Chinese can actually accomplish that with this man who is now currently the leader. But the fact is we have to bring everything to bear. We have to be firm, and we've got to unite those people in that part of the world to stand firmly against North Korea and make sure we have the ballistic missile technology to defend ourselves.
Mr. Trump.
One thing I'd like to add to what the governor is saying, I think that we are now in a position, we owe $19 trillion because of the horrible omnibus budget that was approved 6 weeks ago. It's going to be $21 trillion. We can no longer defend all of these countries, Japan, Germany, South Korea. You order televisions, you order almost anything, you're getting it from these countries, whether it's a Mercedes-Benz or whether it's an air conditioning unit. They're coming out of these countries. They are making a fortune. Saudi Arabia, we are defending Saudi Arabia. Before the oil went down, now they're making less, but they're making plenty. They were making $1 billion a day. We defend all of these countries for peanuts. You talk about budgets. We have to start getting reimbursed for taking care of the military services for all of these countries.
And Wolf,
Hold on. Dr. Parson, Dr. Parson.
Hey, Wolf, let me just say this because he mentioned this. Look, we're all in agreement that the Japanese need to do more. We're all in agreement that the Europeans need to do more. But I hate to just tell everybody we are the leader of the world and we should put the pressure on them to do their job. No, there is no question about it. But at the same time, we also have to rebuild the military. Look, I have a balanced budget plan that cuts taxes, reforms regulations, but also builds the military, puts $100 billion more in defense. We need to rebuild our defenses, but I must also tell you, as a longtime reformer of the Pentagon, we must reform that building. We can't have a weapon system take 22 and a half years. We have 800,000 bureaucrats working for DOD, performing bureaucratic functions when we ought to be putting these resources into strengthening the military. So we can do it all.
Dr.
We
Carson,
can do it all.
How would you deal with North Korea?
Okay, well, first of all, people say that I whine a lot because I don't get time. I'm going to whine because I didn't get asked about taxes. I didn't get asked about Israel. Hugh, you said you're going to be fair to everybody. You didn't ask me about taxes. I had something to say about that. Now,
go ahead. This is your moment.
Okay. We have a system of taxation in this country that is horribly wrong. You know, I never had an audit until I spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast. And then all of a sudden, they came in, they said, we just want to look at your real estate dealings. And then they didn't find anything. So they said, let's look at the whole year. And they didn't find anything. So they said, let's look at the next year and the next year. And they didn't find anything, and they won't find anything because I'm a very honest person. But the fact of the matter is the IRS is not honest, and we need to get rid of them. You know, one who didn't think that we had turned our backs on Israel. You know, they are a strategic partner for us, but also recognize that we have a Judeo-Christian foundation. And the last thing we need to do is to reject Israel. Doesn't mean that we can't be fair to other people. We can always be fair to other people. But, you know, it's like when you have a child. You know, you want to be fair to all the children around, but you have a special attention for your own child. And now, as far as North Korea is concerned, you know, Kim Jong-un is an unstable person, but he does understand strength. And I think we have to present strength to him. We should be encouraging the alliance with Japan and South Korea. We should be encouraging the placement of the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, because that seems to disturb not only the North Koreans, but the Chinese as well. because this man is going to have long-range missiles. He is going to have nuclear capabilities. We need to be able to defend ourselves. And lastly, we should make sure that he knows that if he ever shoots a missile at us, it'll be the last thing he ever does.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to continue national security. Go ahead, Hugh.
Thank you, Wolf. Mr. Trump, we are less than 24 hours away from a ceasefire in Syria that has been brokered between the U.S. and Russia. Do you support this ceasefire?
I really don't, because it's not working and the countries aren't agreeing to it and the rebels aren't agreeing and Syria is not agreeing to it. It's a meaningless ceasefire. I love the idea of a ceasefire. I love the idea with a total cessation, but it's not working, as you know very well. It's not working. If we can do all we want with Russia, but nobody else is adhering to it. So I certainly support it. I would certainly love it, but all parties have to be part of it.
Senator Cruz, your opinion on the ceasefire?
Well, look, we're certainly hopeful that the violence will cease, but there's reason to be highly skeptical. Russia on foreign policy. One of the real challenges with both Donald and Senator Rubio is that they have agreed over and over again with both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. So, for example, in Libya, both of them agreed with the Obama-Clinton policy of toppling the government in Libya. That was a disaster. It gave the country over to radical Islamic terrorism, and it endangered America. Another example is John Kerry. John Kerry, Senator Rubio voted to confirm John Kerry as Secretary of State. I voted against him, and Donald Trump supported John Kerry against George W. Bush in 2004, gave him a check, and John Kerry has been the most anti-Israel Secretary of State this country has ever seen. His diplomacy has been a disaster, and if we nominate someone who agreed with John Kerry, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton on foreign policy, we're not in a strong position to win the general election.
A response, Mr. Trump, then Mr. Rubio.
Again, I think I gave them both checks, to be exactly honest. I think they both like me very much. But the fact is that...
You called for Bush to be impeached.
Well, I think Bush did a hell of a bad job as far as that's concerned. You know it, and so do I.
But you gave him a check and called for him to be impeached?
Be honest. No, this was before. The check came early. But let me just tell you, Syria, he's saying that I was in favor of Syria. He said I was in favor of Libya. I never discussed that subject. I was in favor of Libya. We would be so much better off if Gaddafi in charge right now. If these politicians went to the beach and get in charge, instead of having terrorism all over the place, would be, at least they killed terrorists, all right? And I'm not saying they were good because they were bad. They were really bad. But we don't know what we're getting. You look at Libya right now. ISIS, as we speak, is taking over their oil. As we speak, it's a total mess. We would have been better off if the politicians took a day off instead of going into war.
Senator Rubio.
Yeah, a couple points. Number one, on the Libya situation, we didn't topple Gaddafi. The Libyan people toppled Gaddafi. The only choice before America that this president had to make is, does it happen quickly or does it take a long time? And I argued if it takes a long time, you're going to have rebel forces emerge like these radical Islamists that take advantage of the vacuum. And that's what happened. That's where the term lead from behind came. And that's the foreign policy that apparently Senator Cruz appears to agree with. On John Kerry, yeah, you know why? Because every day John Kerry wasn't appointed. Was another day Hillary Clinton was still in powers. They can do that very quickly.
A lot more money than you'll ever get. As far as John Kerry is concerned, there has been no tougher critic of this man. I think he negotiated one of the worst deals in the history of our country, the Iran deal, where they get their $150 billion and all of the other things that take place. It is a disaster for this country. And speaking of Israel, it's a disaster for Israel. I'm no fan of
Senator
John
Cruz.
Kerry.
Hold on, Governor. Senator Cruz.
You know, it's interesting. Donald just said that he never came out in favor of toppling Gaddafi in Libya. Well, he stated that in an interview that it will be on our website, tedcruz.org. You can see and hear the exact words from Donald's mouth, and I assume when he sees that interview, maybe he forgot about it, that I assume Donald will apologize where he sees that he said exactly that. That's why I voted against him when he came up. And the fact that Donald Trump would write him a check and support him against George W. Bush shows exceptionally poor foreign policy judgment. And I'll give one more example in Israel. When the Obama administration of Israel, when Hamas was raining rockets, Bloomberg, another New York billionaire, got on a plane to Israel from London together. Was Donald. If this is something he cares about, why has he supported anti- Israel politicians, from Jimmy Carter to politicians who are undermining America and the alliance.
There's a critical point that needs to be made here.
Governor, he attacked Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has a right to respond.
Well, look, my response is very simple. There is nobody on this stage that has done more for Israel than I have. Nobody. You might say, you might talk, your politicians all talk, no action. I've been watching it all my life. You are all talk and no action. What I've seen up here, I mean, first of all, this guy's a choke artist and this guy's a liar. You have a combination. This guy always goes for, you have a combination of factors. He can't do it for the obvious reason, and he can't do it because he doesn't know how to tell the truth. Other than that, I rest my case.
This is the typical thing he does on any debate about policy.
One at a time.
Goes right for the outrageous.
Governor Kasich, you have.
There's something I want to point out something here today that it's so critically important about how the Obama administration foreign policy. First of all, we should have been supporting the rebels long ago. They could have taken Assad out, and because we did nothing, the Russians are now in, and they're sitting in the catbird seat. We should have been helping them. I'm thankful that the aid trucks are finally getting into Syria, but the fact is, had we acted, we would have solved that problem. Now let's talk about Libya. Libya didn't go down because it was some people revolution. Hillary Clinton, Samantha Power, and all these other people convinced the president to undermine Gaddafi. They undermined him, and now they have created a cesspool in Libya. And let me just say to you, we have ISIS beginning to get a foothold in Libya. We're going to have to deal with it. There are not many major cities in Libya. They're on the coast, which mostly it's desert, but it's a problem. Then we have ISIS in Syria, and we have ISIS in Iraq. Because this administration has not had a strong and firm foreign policy, we are going to inherit. One of us here is going to inherit a total mess, and we're going to have to work our way out of it, including the need to arm the Ukrainians. They have been ignored, and we need to help them as well and assert ourselves as America.
Let's continue the questioning on ISIS. Maria.
Hold on, Wolf. You said I got a response.
You'll have a chance. Maria will pick up the question.
He called me a liar. You're saying I can't respond to being called a liar?
Go ahead and respond.
You know, what we're seeing with Donald is actually the pattern of Washington, the pattern of Washington deal makers, which is they make promises, they break their words, and then when anyone calls them on it, they call you a liar. And so that's Donald's pattern over and over again. He said, for example, 7 months ago, this is Donald speaking, quote, I, Donald Trump, was a member of the establishment. There's a reason Harry Reid thinks he's the best Republican up here. There's a reason Jimmy Carter said he would support Donald Trump over me, because he said Donald Trump is malleable. He has no fixed set of beliefs, whereas Ted Cruz is not malleable. And every time anyone points at Donald's actual record, what he said on national television, Donald yells liar. Let me tell you something. Falsely accusing someone of lying is itself a lie, and it's something Donald does daily.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
I watched the lobbyists. I watched what this man did to Dr. Ben Carson, who I respect, in Iowa, where he said that Ben Carson is out of the race. He has left Iowa, and he's out of the race. And I thought it was disgraceful. And got a lot of votes because of that. A lot of votes took him away from Ben Carson. I watched that. Probably took him away from me, too. But I watched it. I also watched where he did a form that looked like it came right out of a government agency. And it said on top, voter violation. And then it rated you, and it scared the hell out of people. And it said the only way you clear up the violation, essentially, is to go and vote for Ted Cruz. I watched that fraudulent document, and I said it's the worst thing I've ever seen in politics. To me, that was even worse than what he did to Ben.
Senator Cruz.
I know politicians, believe it or not, better than you do, and it's not good.
Oh, I believe it. No, I believe you know politicians much better than I do, because for 40 years you've been funding liberal Democratic politicians. And by the way,
I funded you.
The
I
reason
funded him.
You're welcome to have the check back.
I funded this guy.
Because let's
I
be
gave
clear.
him a check.
Yeah, you gave me $5,000.
You never funded me.
And by the way, let's be clear. Donald claims to care
You know why? I didn't
about
want to, but he sent me his book with his autograph.
Donald, I understand rules
Mr.
are very
Trump,
hard
you're
for you.
doing
They're
a great
very
job.
confusing.
I have his book.
Okay,
yeah, on your reality
Trump,
TV
you're doing a
show,
great
not
job.
in
Thank you,
Donald.
thank you for the book.
Donald.
Thank you for the book. Go ahead.
Donald, you can get back on your meds
There's a lot of fun
now.
up here tonight, I have to tell you. Thank you for the book. I really appreciate it.
Donald, relax.
Go ahead. I'm relaxed. You're the
sent him a
basket
book.
case. Go ahead. Don't get nervous.
My
I promise you, Donald,
is
there's nothing about
I've
you
seen you.
that makes
I've
anyone
seen you.
nervous.
You're losing
people
so
are actually
badly.
watching this.
You don't know what's happening.
Gentlemen.
Wolf, I'm going to ask that my
You gotta
time not be
stop
deducted
this.
when
Time
he's
is up,
yelling at
gentlemen.
Take control.
Okay, now.
The latest debate,
Well, hold on.
gentlemen,
I'm going to
please.
get my answer. He doesn't get to
I
yell
want
in the whole time.
to move on. These are the rules.
He,
can't move
excuse
on.
me, he
We're
called
moving
me
on.
a
You know what?
liar
You
and then
should
interrupted
move
the whole time.
You've
Am I
had a
allowed to-
chance.
Wolf, do I
Gentlemen.
not get a response?
You have-
Do I not get a response
You'll
without
get
being interrupted?
plenty of response, so stand by.
My name was
I want to
mentioned.
talk about ISIS right now and the federal government. How best to keep Americans safe from ISIS. There's a huge battle underway right now between the tech giant Apple and the federal government. Federal government wants Apple to unlock the phone used by that San Bernardino terrorist to prevent future attacks. Apple has refused, saying it would compromise the security of all of its customers. And just this afternoon, they went to court to block the judge's order. Dana Bash, pick up the questioning.
Senator Rubio, you say it's complicated and that, quote, Apple isn't necessarily wrong to refuse the court order. Why shouldn't investigators have everything at their disposal?
No, in fact, what I have said is that the only thing, the FBI made this very clear 48 hours ago, the only thing they are asking of Apple is that Apple allow them to use their own systems in the FBI to try to guess the password of the San Bernardino killer. The Apple initially came out saying we're being ordered to create a backdoor to an encryption device. That is not accurate. The only thing they're being asked to do, and the FBI made this very clear about 48 hours ago, is allow us disable the self-destruct mode that's in the Apple phone so that we can try to guess using our own systems what the password of this killer was. And I think they should comply with that. That's all they're asking for. They are not asking for Apple to create a backdoor to encryption.
So just to be clear, you did say on CNN a couple of weeks ago, this is a complicated issue. Apple is not necessarily wrong here.
Because at the time, Apple was portraying that the court order was to create a backdoor to an encryption device.
Just to be clear, if you are president, would you instruct your Justice Department to force Apple to comply or not?
To comply with the order that says that they have to allow the FBI the opportunity to try to guess the password?
Correct.
Absolutely. That Apple phone didn't even belong to the killer. It belonged to the killer's employee, who have agreed to allow them to try to do this. That is all they're asking them to do, is to disable the self-destruct mode or the auto erase mode on one phone in the entire world. But Apple doesn't want to do it because they think it hurts their brand. Well, let me tell you, their brand is not superior to the national security of the United States of America.
Apple CEO Tim Cook says this would be bad for America. Where do you stand? National security or personal privacy?
Well, as you know, at that same CNN forum, both Marco and I were asked this question. His answer, he was on both sides of the fence. He's now agreeing with me, and so I'm glad. What I said is, yes, Apple should be forced to comply with this court order. Why? Because under the Fourth Amendment, a search and seizure is reasonable if it has judicial authorization and probable cause. In this instance, the order is not put a backdoor in everyone's cell phone. If that was the order, that order would be problematic because it would compromise security and safety for everyone. I would agree with Apple on that broad policy question, but on the question of unlocking this cell phone of a terrorist, we should enforce the court order and find out everyone that terrorist in San Bernardino talked to on the phone, texted with, emailed, and absolutely Apple doesn't have a right to defy a valid court order in a terrorism investigation.
Dr. Carson, Tim Cook, again, the CEO of Apple, says that this would be bad for America. What do you think?
I think allowing terrorists to get away with things is bad for America. You know, we have a Constitution. We have the Fourth Amendment. It guards us against illegal and unreasonable search and seizure. But we have mechanisms in place with the judicial system that will allow us to gain material that is necessary to benefit the nation as a whole or the community as a whole. And that's why we have FISA courts and things of that nature. So absolutely, I would expect Apple to comply with the court order. If they don't comply with that, you're encouraging chaos in our system.
Mr. Trump. Wait, I want to weigh in on this, please. I want to just tell you that the problem is not right now between the administration and Apple. You know what the problem is? Where's the president been? You sit down in a back room and you sit down with the parties and you get this worked out. You don't litigate this on the front page of the New York Times where everybody in the world is reading about their dirty laundry out here. The President of the United States should be convening a meeting, Apple and our security forces, and then you know what you do when you're the president? You lock the door. And you say you're not coming out till you reach an agreement that both gives the security people what they need and protects the rights of Americans. This is a failure of his leadership to get this done. As an executive should be doing it. And I'll tell you, that's why you want a governor. I do this all the time. And we reach agreements all the time because as an executive, you've got to solve problems instead of fighting on the front page of the newspaper.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Mr. Trump, you have been very vocal about securing the Mexican border, but ISIS has called upon its supporters to conduct attacks in our neighbor to the north, Canada. As a matter of fact, U.S. officials have warned that it is the Canadian border which is the most significant threat. You have said that you will not build a wall in Canada. When it comes to national security and the threat of terrorism, why does Mexico need a wall and Canada doesn't? Isn't that like closing the front door and leaving the back door open?
First of all, you're talking about a border that's many, many, many times longer. You're talking about a massive border. We have far less problem with that border than we do with our southern border, and tremendous amounts. You know, I had the privilege of winning by a landslide, by the way, New Hampshire. You go to New Hampshire, the first thing they talk about is heroin and drugs pouring in. And you wouldn't think this beautiful place is beautiful with the trees and the roads and the countryside. Their biggest problem is heroin. And it's such a shame to see it. They're pouring in from the southern border. So I'm talking about great security. I'm talking a wall that can absolutely be built, and I'll build it on time, on budget. It'll be a very high wall, a great wall. It's going to be built. It's going to be paid for by Canada, by the way. It's going to be paid for. Maybe I'll get Canada paid. Going to be paid for by Mexico. The problem with Canada, you're talking about a massively long piece. You're talking about a border that would be about 4 times longer. It would be very, very hard to do, and it is not our biggest problem. I don't care what anyone says. It is not our big problem. Our problem is not only people coming in, and in many cases the wrong people, it's the tremendous amount of drugs that are coming in.
I want to talk to you, Senator Rubio, about Puerto Rico. As you know, Puerto Rico is in the midst of financial collapse, unable to pay its debt of $72 billion. Puerto Rico is asking for bankruptcy protection, which will give Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans, which are U.S. citizens, you know that, the tools to restructure the debt that is the same debt other 50 states have. You oppose granting Puerto Rico that bankruptcy protection. You say that it is only a last resort measure, but the government of Puerto Rico has said that bankruptcy is its last resort, that's where they are now. How do you explain this very strong stance to the hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans that vote across the U.S., and particularly in your state of Florida?
Sure, because bankruptcy doesn't work unless you change the way you're operating, or you're going to be bankrupt again. And the problem with Puerto Rico is its economy is not growing. It has a massive exodus of professionals and others that are leaving to my home state of Florida and all over the country. They're coming to the mainland from Puerto Rico because the economy there is not growing. It's too expensive to do business there. The tax rate is too high. The government regulations are too extensive. This year alone, with all the problems they're having, they barely cut their budget from one year to the next. So I think the leadership on the island has to show their willingness to get their house in order and put in place measures that allow the economy there to grow again. If the economy in Puerto Rico does not grow, they will never generate the revenue to pay this debt or the billions of dollars in unfunded liabilities that they have on their books, of promises they've made to future generations to make payments. So yes, if they do all of those things, then we can explore the use of bankruptcy protection, but not as the first resort, which is what they're asking for, because it will not solve the problems on the island, and you're going to continue to see hundreds of thousands of people leave that beautiful place and coming to the mainland. They're United States citizens. They're obviously entitled to do so, and we welcome them, but we would also prefer to see a Puerto Rico that once again is growing economically and is robust, and the leaders in charge there now are doing a terrible job. Their previous governor, Luis Fortuño, was doing a great job until he barely lost that election to someone who has taken him in a big government direction
Senator,
once again.
thank you very much. I want our viewers to stay with us right now. There's still more to come, including the last pitch in the final debate before Super Tuesday.
You're invited to discover.
Am I dangerous?
No, but others are. The life of Christ like you've never seen it before.
Keep your power inside you until your Father shows you the time to use it.
The Young Messiah, rated PG-13.
This is Zoe. She's 1, and she's running for president. Because if she's cared for, kept safe, and has a chance to learn and grow, then she could lead our great nation in, like, 50 years. Help kids like Zoe dream big. The Why, for early learning, childcare, mentorship, and more. For a better us. Donate to The Why at zoeforpresident.net.
Spend a few days in the U.S. Virgin Islands and return with a lifetime of experiences. That's Virgin Islands Nights.
The future belongs to the fast. And to help you accelerate, we've created a new company. One totally focused on what's next for your business. A true partnership where people, technology, and ideas push everyone forward. Accelerating innovation. Accelerating transformation. Accelerating next. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise.
Risen is the #1 new movie in America. Critics and audiences agree. Risen elevates the faith-based genre.
Open your heart and see.
It's a biblical spectacular.
I can never be the same.
Risen, rated PG-13.
Some stories are bigger than 140 characters.
The presidency isn't won on election night. Backroom deals, punishing attacks, and ruthless deeds. These dark truths seal victory long before America votes. What would you do to reach the world's most powerful office?
Race for the White House, narrated by Kevin Spacey on CNN.
Alarm systems tell us after a break-in has occurred. So I thought, what if you could prevent burglary? Bell does that.
Hello?
I'm doing free tree trimming estimates.
I'm dating the children right now.
With Ring, you're always home. Ring lets you see and speak with whoever's at your home from anywhere. And with dual power options, you can install Ring in just minutes. Available at ring.com and these fine retailers.
Carl, don't you have friends coming over?
Yeah, so?
It stinks in here. You've got to wash this whole room.
Are you kidding? Wash it?
Let's wash it with Febreze.
For all the things you can't wash, use Febreze Fabric Refresher.
Whoa.
Hey, Mrs. Weber. Hey, it smells nice in here.
And try Pluggable Febreze to continuously eliminate odors for up to 45 days of freshness. Pluggable Febreze and Fabric Refresher. 2 more ways to breathe happy.
The South Carolina Democratic primary. All-day coverage, Saturday on CNN.
Welcome back to the University of Houston. It's time now for closing statements. All of you will have 30 seconds. Dr. Carson, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I want people to think about what kind of leader do you want and what kind of person do you want your kids to emulate. Think about that. Secondly, several years ago, a movie was made about these hands. These hands, by the grace of God, have saved many lives and healed many families. And I'm asking you tonight, America, to join hands with me to heal, inspire, and revive America. If not us, who? And if not now, when?
Governor Kasich.
Well, the last USA Today poll had me beating Hillary Clinton by 11 points, more than anybody on this stage. Secondly, I hope you saw tonight that executive experience really matters. It matters in terms of growing our economy, balancing budgets, cutting taxes, reforming regulations. I've done it in Washington, I've done it in Ohio, and I can go back to Washington and do it again. But I hope you also notice tonight that I do have the foreign policy experience, not just a few years, but a lot of years in working with some of the great minds in this country to develop the expertise, the confidence, the firmness, the toughness, and the ability to bring people together. I hope you all think about giving me your vote. I would appreciate it very much, and I tell you, we won't have to spend time figuring out what we're going to do. I will hit the ground running, and we will get America moving again. Thank you all very much.
Senator Rubio.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. You know, this campaign has come a long way. It was just a few months ago, there were 15 or 11 of us on the stage, and now it's narrowed and the votes are starting to count. And we have an incredible decision to make. Not just about the direction of America, but the identity of our party and of the conservative movement. The time for games is over. I know you've had a lot of choices to make, but now it's time to narrow it down, and I'm asking you to get behind me. Go on my website and join our effort, marcorubio.com, so we can bring an end to the silliness, this looniness, and once again re-embrace all the things that made America and the Republican Party the bearer of the conservative movement in this country.
Senator Cruz.
Washington deals are bankrupting this country. There are several deal makers on this stage, but there's only one person who has consistently stood up to both parties, fighting for the American people against the Washington deals. If I'm elected president on the first day in office, I will rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action. I will instruct the Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and prosecute any criminal violations. I will instruct every federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. I will rip the catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal, and I will begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. We will repeal Obamacare, abolish the IRS, secure the border, and bring back jobs.
Mr. Trump.
Thank you. Nobody knows politicians better than I do. They're all talk. There's no action, nothing gets done. I've watched it for years. Take a look at what's happening to our country. All of the things that I've been talking about, whether it's trade, whether it's building up our depleted military, whether it's taking care of our vets, whether it's getting rid of Common Core, which is a disaster, or knocking out Obamacare and coming up with something so much better. I will get it done. Politicians will never, ever get it done, and we will make America great again. Thank you.
Mr. Trump, thank you, and thanks to each of the candidates on behalf of everyone here at CNN and the Telemundo. We also want to thank the Republican National Committee and the University of Houston. My thanks also to Hugh Hewitt, Maria Celeste, and Dana Bash. Super Tuesday is only 5 days away. Right now, Anderson Cooper picks up our special coverage. Anderson.
Wolf, thanks very much. So there it is, the final Republican debate here in Houston before the biggest primary day so far, Super Tuesday. The final opportunity before 13 states decide for every candidate not named Donald Trump to face Donald Trump head on. The smoke just now starting to clear from what was a very, very fiery debate. The candidates now making their way to our cameras. I'm Anderson Cooper in the spin room outside the debate hall, and yes, they do really call it that. With me tonight, the entire CNN debate team. We have Jake Tapper with his panel, Chris Cuomo, moderator Wolf Blitzer, our correspondents, as well as the best team of analysts and campaign professionals around. Let's get a quick take from them first. Inside Politics anchor and chief national correspondent John King, senior political reporter Nia Malika Henderson is joining me, CNN political commentators Amanda Carpenter, Jeffrey Lord, S.E. Cupp, and Kevin Madden. Amanda's a former Cruise communications director. Jeff's a Trump supporter, former top Reagan political advisor. S.E.'s a conservative columnist, and Kevin is a Republican strategist. John King, let's start with you. What a night! What of the fire, the hostility at times on that debate stage intense.
Very aggressive Marco Rubio tonight, a very aggressive at times Ted Cruz tonight, going after Donald Trump, essentially saying on issue after issue, you are not a conservative, you are not a Republican, and our voters should not trust you to be president. They prosecuted that pretty effectively. The question is, why did they wait till the 10th debate? Why did they wait 10 debates and for Donald Trump to be so far
Chris
out
Cuomo
ahead?
has Donald Trump. Let's listen in. Chris, you're on.
All right. Well, here we are, Mr. Trump. You were in the middle of the stage tonight. It seemed like at times it was 2-on-1, that your head was on a swivel with Rubio and Cruz coming at you.
Well, they were coming. I mean, they're doing very badly in the polls. The new Bloomberg poll just came out before the debate where they're way down, I mean, really down. And so the politicians, they want to get elected, but they are doing badly. And I think CNN did a very good job, but I think they had a lot of focus on the three in the middle, and maybe that's the way it should have been. I don't know. But I was very happy. I thought it was great. I thought it was exciting, and I thought it was great.
What did you think of that dynamic of having to take both of them on? Did you feel that?
Fine. I've dealt with the toughest people in the world over my lifetime, and I've dealt with much tougher. I think that it was fine. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed the debating process.
What do you think that brought out for the voters tonight, to your advantage?
Well, I think they see that I'm a guy that can handle people. I mean, I've never done this before. I create jobs. I've created great companies, and a really great company. And I think it shows what you're made of. I think it's really a good test. But I enjoy the process. I've actually enjoyed every single debate.
During that debate, as it was going on, Marco Rubio started on his website selling watches as a pretend gimmick to say that they were watches that would have been yours or you would have been selling, but they're just donations for him. It was a quick response.
Well,
during the actual debate, what do you make of the move?
The problem with Marco, he's a choke artist. He chokes, and he did it in front of Chris Christie. I've never seen anything like that. I was standing right next to him. I look over, I say, "Are you okay?" I mean, it looked like he just came out of a swimming pool. He was soaking wet. And he kept repeating himself.
He tried to use that on you tonight.
No, but I didn't do any repeating. I mean, I just say what's needed. I didn't do that. But he really, we can't have a choke artist. One thing I've learned from sports, I was actually a very good athlete. When you're a choker, you're always a choker. We can't have that. We can't take any chances in this country.
How long, now that you're starting to get the votes in and you're at the top, do you think that people should start thinking about leaving this race?
I think so, but, it's not for me to say. I would say that a few of them maybe should. And, Marco, I'm 20 points up on him in Florida, right? And with Cruz, I'm even. It seems the last polls, I'm even in Texas and winning every other state. Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be over fairly quickly, and I don't think there's going to be a convention.
It seemed like Senator Rubio was more intent to going at you directly tonight than even Senator Cruz. Why do you think that was?
That's true. I was a little surprised by it, but I liked it. I thought it was fine. But
did he show you a toughness that you didn't see against Christie?
No, I think it was the same basic person. But he's a meltdown guy. I mean, I'm looking at him. He's pouring sweat. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what the problem is, but he's just pouring down sweat. We have to have somebody that doesn't sweat. I mean, we need somebody that when they walk into Putin's office or Putin walks into our office or the Chinese come to deal with us, that we know what we're doing. We need somebody that doesn't have whatever that is that he's got.
Now, online, there was an interesting observation. I want to see if you share it, which is that sometimes you like to use tough language about people, certainly in tweets, as we know. But tonight they said you weren't doing it, that you were doubling down on your positions and trying to argue on a policy level more than a personal level. Was that intentional?
So. And I think it was intentional because I'm leading by so much. Honestly, it got me here. That attitude got me here. But now it's time, and I'm very focused on policy. Look, I'm somebody that went to the best college, and I got very good marks. Policy is very easy. But when I started off with 7 people, we had a total of 17 people. We're now down to 5. That got me there, but now I think I have a little bit of a different attitude.
Do you think that the race is over for the nomination?
No, I never say it's over. It's not over till it's over, as our friend would say, right, Yogi? But I think we're doing really well. I love that Bloomberg poll. It did many of the southern states, and we're just leading by tremendous numbers.
Do you think when you're standing on that stage tonight, specifically, as you said, it was a focus, somewhat of a three-man dynamic tonight?
I thought it was very unfair, I must tell you, to Ben Carson and to the governor. I thought it was really pretty unfair because they weren't asked very many questions. And, you know, they are the final 5. And I actually thought Ben in particular was treated unfairly. I don't think he was asked enough questions. It wasn't right.
Well, a little bit of it was obviously what the players decide to do, right? When two of them decide to start using their energy and you're talking about each other, that's what happens.
I think he had a right to be upset, but that's up to CNN. But and the same is true, I think, with Kasich. But you know, I just enjoyed it. I had a good time. I was in the middle of it, and I really enjoyed the process. I love the process, and I actually like debating.
They came at you tonight about something that's in the news right now that really is at your control, which is the tax returns. Yeah. Mitt Romney, during the debate, was bringing it up again. You could show him in a second if you want to. Why is Trump delaying?
Well,
what do you say?
Let me explain about Mitt. You know, Mitt is a guy who was a horrible candidate. He lost a race that should have been won, and it should have been won easily. And I don't know what happened. He, like, disappeared the last 2 months. But when Mitt gave his tax returns, just so you understand, it was about 6 months from now in 2012. It was 2012. It was exactly September 21st. And that's when he gave his tax return. We're in a different world. He's just trying to remain relevant. Nobody's talking to him much anymore. He got some publicity today. But the one problem I have is that I'm always audited by the IRS, which I think is very unfair. I don't know, maybe because of religion, maybe because of something else, maybe because I'm doing this, although this is just recently.
What do you mean religion?
Well, maybe because of the fact that I'm a strong Christian and I feel strongly about it, and maybe there's a bias.
You think maybe you get audited for being a strong Christian?
You see what's happened. I mean, you have many religious groups that are complaining about that. They've been complaining about it for a long time.
So at least the ones that aren't audited. Just seems like an easy answer for you.
No, I can't do that. I can't do that. We have to put it together in a very unified way. They all relate to each other. I don't know if you saw the picture I have where I have almost 1,000 pages.
Big stack of paper.
The ones from previous relate to the ones later, and it doesn't make sense unless they're all related.
You know what you would do with this issue if somebody else had it? You'd say, what are you talking about? He doesn't want to put him out?
Nobody that's under a regular audit. I mean, it's just a regular audit. I did almost every year. I think for 12 years, 10 years, 12 years, I get audited. Nobody would ever put out their returns that's under an audit. It's very unfair that I'm audited all the time. And by the way, I always pass the audit. I've always passed the audit.
Why wouldn't you put them out because you're under audit, just so people understand?
Of course you don't put it out. You're in the midst of negotiating and talking to the IRS. You never put it out. You would never do that. Your lawyers would never allow you to do that. It's a very simple audit. I think it perhaps will go fast and perhaps it won't. And when it's complete, you got them. I love it. But I think until that audit is done, certainly you wouldn't do that.
Do you think that people tonight got a chance to see the best that those two senators could bring to you and your ability to handle it? Is that, you think, the headline?
I don't know if they were good, bad, or indifferent. I didn't think they were very effective. But again, that's me talking. I think I handled it very well. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, here I am standing in the middle. I knew it was going to happen. I just enjoyed it. I thought it was a great debate.
Did you anticipate both of them coming at you that way?
Yes, I did. I really anticipated it. I was prepared for it. I thought it would happen. They're desperate. I mean, what are they going to do? They're losing by massive amounts. Rubio hasn't won anything. Ted won Iowa, and that's under suspicion because of what he did to Ben Carson. So, you know, I mean, and he's lost very badly since then. I mean, Ted is, I am leading with evangelicals. I'm leading with men, with women. I'm leading with everything. So he's under a lot of pressure. Hey, look, they're politicians. They're under a great deal of pressure.
Have you heard anything from former Mexican President Vicente Fox?
Well, I think he should apologize for his foul mouth. I think it's a disgusting thing that he said. And I could tell you, I would not use that word. But if I did use that word, I probably wouldn't have even been allowed on the stage tonight.
You do understand there's a touch of irony in that, though, that you're saying to someone for
I'm
using
just
foul
telling you.
language.
I mean, I don't know what the problem is, but I think he should apologize to a lot of people that heard that word. That was I heard it this afternoon. I couldn't believe it.
How do you feel after tonight?
I feel great. I mean, I think we're doing so well. I think the debate was really one of my best debates, considering the fact that I was being hit from all sides.
It's best to be tested, though, right?
It was a good test. It was really a good test. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And now I go down and I guess I speak to other people other than you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Take
Good
care
luck,
of yourself.
Mr. Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Back to you, Anderson.
There is no one other than Chris Cuomo, as far as I'm concerned, Chris. Chris Cuomo talking to Donald Trump immediately after the debate. Let's continue with our panel right here. Kevin Madden, what'd you make of what you saw tonight?
Well, look, I think Rubio clearly came out with a very aggressive strategy. He looked a lot like a boxer who was hitting a speed bag. And I think he tried to hold Donald Trump accountable for what he believes is hypocrisy, a departure from a lot of Republican orthodoxy on key policies that Republican voters care about, and the fact that Donald Trump, when pressed for details, doesn't have any. And so those are very serious vulnerabilities right now that Marco Rubio just had to go after.
Pressed for details, particularly on his health care policy, beyond two sentences, he wasn't really able to go into great detail.
I think one of the questions is, and I think John alluded to this earlier, is whether or not one debate is enough. I think Marco Rubio, that was here tonight, is going to have to do this 24/7 from here on out.
I want to go to our Jake Tapper, who has Senator Ted Cruz with him. Jake?
Thanks, Anderson. I'm here with Senator Ted Cruz. First of all, is it nicer to be in your home state to do a debate than in other places?
It is wonderful to be at home. You know, this was the first time I've slept in my own bed in a month.
Right.
And it was great to wake up with my girls jumping in bed with me to wake me up. It's the best alarm clock you can have. I love being home in Texas.
And I saw you talking to your girls during the breaks. It's very sweet. But let's talk about the debate. Donald Trump said that he thought he had a good debate, especially considering the fact that both you and Senator Rubio were coming at him. I'm sure you disagree. How do you think it went?
Well, look, I think this debate provided a lot of clarity. It became very clear that Donald Trump is not a good candidate to face Hillary Clinton. And he's not a good candidate to face Hillary Clinton because he's agreed with her on far too many issues. You know, it was really striking when we talked about Obamacare that Donald ran away from, for decades, he's argued for socialized medicine, basically the same government control of your health care Bernie Sanders advocates. Tonight on the debate stage, he ran away from it, and when I pointed it out, he did what Donald always does. He called me a liar because he doesn't like it when anyone points to his record. He's literally for 20 years had that position. I mean, that was astonishing to see him run away from it. And we saw that over and over again, whether it was on Obamacare, whether it was on amnesty and citizenship, whether it was on Libya, or whether it was on Israel, where he wouldn't stand with Israel. Instead, he agrees with Hillary Clinton that the United States should be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. Those are positions that would fit well in the Democratic Party. But I think if he's our nominee, in all likelihood, Hillary wins. That's a very bad outcome for the country.
He also, as you say, he called you a liar. He also called you a basket case at one point, I think. Since you won Iowa, he has been going at you really hard. Before Iowa, he went after you on issues like your opposition to ethanol subsidies. But it's been very personal since then. And since then, you have come in third 3 times in a row and lost evangelical voters in the 2 other states other than Iowa where they are a sizable population in the Republican electorate, South Carolina and Nevada. Are you afraid at all that his branding powers are sticking on you?
Jake, we're going to have a very strong Super Tuesday in 5 days. Here in the state of Texas, I was really honored this week to be endorsed by the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, an incredibly strong governor, a dear friend, and our support across Super Tuesday. There's a reason Donald is attacking me so hard, because he recognizes I'm the only candidate in this field that can beat him.
Well, because you won Iowa. I mean, that's probably
I'm the only candidate that has beaten him, and I'm the only candidate. You look at, for example, right now in Texas, I've got a large lead in my home state of Texas. Marco Rubio is down to Donald 15 points in his home state of Florida. If you can't win your home state, that's a problem. And so Donald's approach, he can't respond on substance. So what he just does is he attacks it. He goes nasty, he goes personal, he throws insults. You know, it was amazing seeing him criticizing Vicente Fox for using profanity, given that this is a man who curses like a sailor as a presidential candidate. At the end of the day, listen, this has been fun with Donald in the race. It's entertaining. It's like going to the circus. You know, you've got acrobats and clowns and dancing bears. But the stakes are serious,
Right.
Jake. If we get this wrong, you and I both have little kids. This election is about what kind of country our kids inherit. And Donald Trump, if he's our nominee, the last 10 polls, 8 out of the 10 he loses to Hillary. Clinton. The last 10 polls taken nationally, because if the audits are going to show that he committed tax frauds, we ought to know this in the primary and not let Hillary Clinton and the media go to town on him in the general. And then secondly, his support of the Clinton Foundation. Listen, the Clinton Foundation and the corruption there is going to be a major issue in the general election. And if Donald is our nominee, he can't raise that issue because Hillary will laugh at him and say, well, gosh, Donald, why did you donate to the Clinton Foundation?
Mm-hmm. One other thing, Marco Rubio has gotten a lot of good marks from pundits this evening for his performance, including...
I'm shocked because that has never happened that the TV pundits give Marco Rubio good marks.
Including by some of your supporters, such as Glenn Beck, who obviously is a very strong supporter of yours, but has tweeted that he thought Marco Rubio had a good debate performance. Bob Vanderplat's another supporter of yours. What did you think of Marco Rubio's performance?
Listen, I actually agree Marco did a good job tonight. He did something tonight that he's never done, which is he actually, for the first time, took on Donald Trump, and I'm glad he did. Listen, Marco is not my... He's really happy. If his poll numbers dip, I mean, he really has a hard time with that.
You were very strong against Donald Trump this evening, though. I would say it's probably fair to say that you were more forceful against him. Marco Rubio was especially more forceful because he's been holding his fire.
No, it's the first time. I was glad to see Marco doing that. That's important to have that clear distinction, and that was worthwhile.
But both of you were stronger than you've ever been. And I think one of the questions that a lot of Republicans might have, people who don't want Trump to have the nomination, is why wait until the 10th debate to draw these distinctions? Why not earlier?
Let's be clear. I've been drawing distinction with Donald for weeks, if not months, taking him on directly, and while the rest of the field has been unwilling to do so. You know, the only one else in the field who was willing to take on Donald was Jeb Bush. When I chatted with Jeb a couple of days ago, I said it was really a shame he wasn't going to be on the debate stage anymore because he was the only one other than me that had shown the backbone to take on Donald. So I was glad to welcome Marco to the debate for the first time, but that should have happened earlier, and for whatever reason, the other candidates had been afraid to tangle.
Well, to be fair to the other candidates, there's an elephant's graveyard of others who took him on.
There is.
Bobby Jindal, Lindsey Graham, Rick Perry, now Jeb Bush. You have survived, of course.
Well, not only survived, beaten him. And I think the question right now, we're headed into Super Tuesday. If folks at home, if you're one of the 65% of Republicans that thinks Donald Trump is the wrong candidate to face Hillary Clinton, Super Tuesday is the best opportunity to stop that. The only candidate who's ever beaten Donald Trump
through just in July of 2012? No, none, zero. So, yeah, first, a lot of people heard of that. We got nothing from the government. Now, Missouri, the state of Missouri, State Emergency Management Agency, claims that they would notify our city of St. Louis and county emergency management officials. Well, they never heard anything about that potential threat that came through. So,
how will this affect our automobiles, like both short-term and long-term?
well, the EMP emitted from a solar flare is less damaging, not as severe as a nuclear detonation. So I have seen reports and studies that basically your car batteries, if it's your dashboard is so made up of electrical components, they would all be fried if your car is on. If your car is not, or parked under a garage, you might be okay. But if you're actually in traffic, that's where I've seen everything stops.
And it's permanent, it'll be permanent.
And
I mean, it'll be fried.
well, it's been hit and miss. Okay. Some of the studies show that cars were rendered useless, but after several hours could actually start the ignitions up.
So we don't know.
So we don't know, right? Yeah, don't know.
I'm going with a book called 1 Second After.
Well, and I was involved for a couple of years, daily or weekly conference calls with these high experts, including Bill Graham, or not Bill Graham, Forston, Bob Forston. And yeah, he wrote that book giving an idea of what could happen after our country's hit with an EMP. And he's very interesting to listen to. So he's got a good website that gives a lot of emergency preparedness tips. Now you ask, what can we do? That's one thing I would definitely be doing, is preparing like you would for any disaster. You got to have your emergency preparedness kits together. I've got one in all of our cars. And, you know, your supply of food, long-term shelf life, water, or access to purification methods. It's really all you can do. And try to be able to survive long enough until help comes from the outside. And that's what I would not be counting on. So besides trying to get this fixed, it's have a backup plan B is all we can do. Yeah.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
Well, you were talking about nationally surge protectors. So in practical purposes, we're going to be using our computers and our cell phones, and we're not going to be putting them in a Faraday cage or a microwave or whatever. But like our home, is there surge protection or things that we can do for our home that would be individual level versus citywide level of protection?
Well,
I
would say that, you know, you just have to have your appliances disconnected, and you're not going to know when that's going to be. Right. So you can go off grid. There's some very expensive systems that will run your home off the electric grid, but I don't know, those systems still have electrical components, and they still have to tap into a source of electricity, and that's what could be fried. Let me get this gentleman in the back. He's been waiting.
Okay, referring back to ham radio.
Yes.
Of course, these have damaged batteries. That power source to run ham radio off of.
John?
I don't know as much about